What's up, friends? A return guest in the studio today. Another ginger brother from another mother. It's Mr. JP Sears. He is back. The last time we ran this podcast was a couple of years ago, and JP has locked in since then. He's jacked and juicy and funnier than ever. We have a conversation all about fatherhood, what he's doing for his personal health and training these days, the big career changes that he's making in content creation and comedy, the state of the world, and so much more. Mr. JP Sears, let's go. JP, welcome back, my friend.
Steve, thank you for having me back.
Yeah, dude, it's been almost 2 years since we did the first one, and since then, you have been locking the fuck in, dude. You look great. You got out of the truck this morning. Your quads are popping out of these shorts. I appreciate it. What have you been getting into?
Man, well, one, we were talking before this. For my mental health, working out and then working out hard, I think it's the best thing for my mental health. I think a lot of people could draw from that. So yeah, I've just been blasting myself. I've got my home gym and, times work out with friends, which always up levels it because you want to just make them feel ashamed if you can. So you're going to do more than you normally would do. So yeah, I'm programming CrossFit type workouts and just loving it, loving the idea. I woke up one day and I was like, I'm 44. To my younger self, like when I was 20, I thought 44, that's an old guy. And we're all the authors of our story. So I'm enjoying writing what 44 means to me and, being fitter, stronger, recovering faster than when I was in my 20s is just apparently part of my story. And it doesn't happen by accident. So I've been enjoying moving my body and trying to be as vital as I can be.
I love that, man. I'm not quite at 44 yet, so I'm a little behind you at 36. But I do feel somewhat similar that even conceptually when I was, early 20s or a teenager, 36, you're on the brink of 40. You're like, 40's old, man, and it's all downhill from here. These are the cultural tropes, right? Yeah. And where I'm at right now, I almost feel fitter and stronger than I've ever been. I mean, objectively, I'm stronger than I've ever been, but I feel fitter. I think, recovery and stuff can be a little slow. And sometimes I have those I'm sore, I'm beat up for 2 days. And, when you're made of magic and rubber in 21, you can bounce back on 4 hours of sleep and a 6-pack of Coors Light. You can get away with a lot of stupid shit. So you have to be intentional. Like you said, it doesn't happen on accident. Yeah. But I love that you said that you're writing your own story, that you are, would you say, in the best shape of your life at this point?
Yeah. I mean, pretty objectively speaking, my body weight at a lean body fat percentage, it's as high as it's ever been. And my output. So by the objective measures, I'm grateful to say I'm as fit as I've ever been, which I enjoy. And I think we're also living in a good time for it because even though we remember back to when we were 20, it's 36, 44. Those are old farts. You probably need a walker, right? I know we kind of warp what things were. However, I think also we're living in a time where health has never been trendier and intelligent health has never been trendier. Right. When I was a kid and my dad was 36, 40 years old, you couldn't go buy liver supplements. No. Nobody was doing cold plunging. Not many people knew sleep is a vital part. Whether you're accelerating how fast you age or slowing it down. So the information that we're living in, granted you have to act on it, but the information we're living in is so abundant. It's like that information is the fountain of youth, and you can drink from it. So I do think we're living in a pretty privileged time when it comes to, we know how to take care of ourselves. We know how to write a good story on how we age. Aging isn't a choice, but how we age is 100% a choice. Yep. Whether you're taking that choice on passively, where you're not doing anything intentional, or you're taking it on really seriously.
Couldn't agree more, man. And I think it's a privilege in many instances that we have access to the world's best and brightest on hour-long podcasts, just giving you this free information that otherwise, for our parents in particular, they just weren't privy to this information. So even the realm of not just the physical, but like talk about self-development, talk about working with feelings, managing your emotion, mindset work, shadow work, all of these things that now are just right there at the edge of your fingertips in this phone, the Alexandria's library that lives in your pocket 24/7. It's really cool. And it's a double-edged sword too, because as you well know, lots of information is awesome, but you have to act on it. And also, when there's just that sheer amount of volume, there's going to be some shit that makes its way through. So you've also got to vet that information very, very carefully. So in an age of information, how have you come to really focus on your big rocks, if you will, not majoring in the minors, stacking pebbles? Like, what are your big rocks? We've talked about exercise, so that's obviously huge. But what else do you really lean into what do you think are the biggest tangible needle movers for you?
Yeah, this is different now than when I was in my 20s. Sleep is so huge, and it's so unsexy, so ungratifying. You do a hard workout, that's kind of gratifying, and you can talk about it with friends.
Post it on your Instagram, look good.
Absolutely. You're not going to, here's a 3-minute reel of me sleeping. I crushed it. But man, sleep is, it's, I wish it wasn't. It's my number one factor in how I feel, how my body's functioning. I mentioned to you, I'm doing Norwegian 4x4 training on a assault bike, which is just, it's a non-consensual piece of exercise equipment. It should be incarcerated. But what was it? A couple weeks ago, I got off a plane. My sleep had not been good for a few nights in a row, and then massive time zone jump. Got on that, and I couldn't finish the workout. I couldn't finish the exact workout I had done 3 or 4 previous times, which is just a marker of like, that's how important sleep is to me. So sleep is a huge one. Water with good electrolytes, so you're properly hydrated. I'm always doing organ supplementation, and then eating whole foods. Those are, and then I would say, family time is essential. You're not a fit human being. Like if you've got a family, you're not a fit human being if they're not a priority. You're a very lopsided human being. Friend time, connection. I think connection, which has to do with family, friends, but just connecting to those who matter most. Man, that needs to be talked about more.
It does.
That is an absolute staple of quality of life, vitality. There's a friend of mine, Michael Morelli. He's got great information, very inspiring dude. And he kind of, on Twitter, put on blast Bryan Johnson, the vegan longevity vampire guy, does some questionable stuff. And in a way kind of looks like a very old dude.
Frail lesbian.
Yeah, you said it. That's well said. But, Bryan Johnson's spending over $1 million a year for his longevity. You can watch a documentary on him on Netflix. It's not that interesting, but anyway, if you watch it, you see he's doing all these protocols, tons of different supplements, measuring his blood, doing all these fancy things. And he lives in isolation. He's in his mid to late 40s. He doesn't date because that would interfere with his nightly routine.
Wild.
And I don't say this to knock him. It's unfortunate, but he's got some family estrangement. He was part of Mormonism. He left that, so they kind of black sheeped him. So long story short, he doesn't have much connection in his life from the outside looking at the documentary, and he doesn't prioritize it. And my friend Michael Morelli, he retweeted one of Bryan Johnson's, here's the top hacks for longevity, all fancy, not big mover stuff, but it's complicated so it looks sexy.
Yeah, right.
But he just retweeted it and said he is missing the number one factor when it comes to longevity, connection.
Yeah.
You look at all the blue zone people that live to 300 years old or whatever, it's like connection is the common denominator.
That's it.
Out of all of them. So long story short, to answer your question, sleep, exercise, good hydration, good food, or like I don't like organ meat, so I always do the organ supplements. connection time, man.
Yeah.
Those are my big things. And I do
really
some
big.
of the fun stuff like cold plunging and red lights, but put those where they go. Those are, second, third
That's
tier
right.
things.
They're the pebbles, right?
Yeah.
I think Bryan Johnson's, I made a video about him recently on YouTube, and it was echoing a lot of what you said, that I don't know whether majoring in the minors is the right terminology there, but it's like, are you missing the forest for the trees?
Yeah.
Particularly, like, I think the quality of your life, a lot of it at least, is the quality of your relationships, and they look to be either the fact that you're choosing not to date because it interferes with your biohacking routines and it's going to affect your sleep score just seems ass backwards. I mean, you can biohack life to death, and you can do all the longevity exercises in your basement or in your lab in the quest of living longer, but why do you want to live longer? Why do you want, his whole moniker is don't die. But why do you want to not die if you're lonely and miserable in the process, and you've started to worship like intellect or living forever? It just seems very not human.
In pontificating on that, if your whole goal is not to die, that would have a reasonable implication you're afraid to die, which then would have a reasonable implication of, if you're making your whole goal not to die because you're afraid to die, you're living in fear.
Bingo.
The goal isn't live well so I can show up more fully to what matters most. It kind of becomes a scenario where it's a battery changer that only changes its own batteries. It's like, what are those batteries for? To change its own batteries, rather than something that you and I would consider meaningful and worthwhile.
Yeah. There is and I was trapped in this for a while, actually, the unhealthy obsession with health.
Yeah, I went through it too.
Yeah, dude. And we've got labels for everything, right? So orthorexia is the label.
Yeah.
It's something like, this just fascination with health to a point where it becomes unhealthy. And I remember, like, vividly missing out on dinners with friends because, well, that restaurant cooks in seed oils, and I don't eat seed oils. Or going out and watching everybody enjoy this fresh-baked popover that the chef made and saying how delicious it was with some fresh butter. And I was like, well, I'm not eating that because it's got gluten in it. And, the older I get, and maybe it's wisdom or maybe it's giving less of a shit or something like that, but I'm actually convinced that one of the best longevity hacks is relaxing a little bit, chilling out, having a nervous system that's not so uptight. And I think part of being able to have that range is, interestingly, like almost paradoxically, the ability to absolutely kill yourself in the gym like a savage, that then afterwards is like, it's the contract and relax kind of thing, that afterwards it makes me a little bit more like loose, able to let just life rinse off me. And I'm sure that chilling out is a big part of life, and I think community helps play into that and all of those things, because you can borrow from the tribe, but relax a little bit, man. Life's heavy enough.
I agree. I've noticed, to me, it's a very common pattern in people in their health journeys. You go through a phase of obsessive compulsive control. I went through it where, the restaurant, they do seed oils, and look at me, and then you start obliterating rituals of connection. We're sharing a meal. Well, I'm not going to do that because it's not on my keto plan, or it's not this. Oh, there's gluten in it. Even though I was never gluten intolerant, it was just, I pretend I'm gluten intolerant because that's the trendy thing to do. Becomes a source of disconnection. And I think bottom line is, the human ego wants a sense of control, period. How does it act that out? We can do that with our health endeavors, and the illusion is I'm getting healthier. But I started sitting with myself after doing this for long enough for me to realize I was doing it, and I started wondering, like, all right, like, being obsessive about my food, how many units of health does that give me? And I'm like, let's say it gives me 10, and that's obviously just imaginary, but as a thought exercise, maybe that improves my health by 10 units. How much mental stress do I go through, disconnection stress do I go through to implement this nutritional rigidity? What if it's like 14 units and I'm actually at a net loss because of my rigidity? In fact, my beautiful lady, Mallory, when we started dating, one of her first questions to me is, what are you rigid on, JP?
Ooh. Went right in.
Yeah, because she had been through, a past relationship where the guy who's a dear friend of mine, I love him to death, and he would only eat meat that he hunted. And he had so many of these rigid practices, and that was disconnective in that relationship. So one of her first questions is, what are you rigid on? And I said, well, I used to be pretty rigid about everything. And now, started talking about it. And she realized like, oh, you've got this, what you're talking about, this fluidity, this you're able to chill kind of thing. So I think it's a great point to be at. And I think when people arrive at that in their natural evolution, they've got so many of the big boulders of the foundation of health. They've become second nature.
That's right.
Where like you've got 2 bottles of water, the 2 trendiest glass bottles of water, you psycho. Like you're probably not putting much mental energy into hydration. It's so second nature to you. Yeah. You don't have to be rigid about it because you're fluid. It's just an ingrained habit. And I think so many of our health habits become that after a while. Yeah. So then we can just relax our anal sphincter of rigidity.
Dude, I love that you said that. That's so funny. I always tell people, relax your butthole. Yeah. And you said anal sphincter. It's a little bit more medicalized. I like that. It's a little bit more professional.
Yeah, I'm a doctor.
Thank you. Yeah, I knew it. That's funny. And you're so right. I think it takes a while to get there. It seems to be a very similar journey that everybody goes on. The control, the rigidity, and then when these things become second nature, it's kind of like the 80-20 principle. If you're getting it right 80% of the time, you don't even need to sweat the 20. Because you feel so good in the 80, that usually becomes something more like a 90-10 anyway. Yeah. But there's freedom in that, as opposed to like trying to be 100 and then clinging and then the undue mental stress that you put on yourself. That stress of trying to be perfect is more harmful than the imperfections are.
Yeah. Perfectionism, man, it's another control drama.
Yeah.
We know we'll never be perfect. It gives us a sense of control, but I do think perfectionism, it's just relabel that I'm controlling here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a myth, man. Nobody's perfect. Not even Bryan Johnson, if you're watching this. Sorry, dude. You are going to die. I'm sorry.
And eat some meat.
I mean, maybe the way peptides and science are going, maybe you can live forever. I'm not even sure I would want that, man. Life is great. It's very full, but I feel like there's going to be a point where I'm like, I'm good. I think my work here is complete. Hopefully left the world better than I found it, and now it's time to take a rest.
Yeah.
See what happens next.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what's interesting about this awareness in the content sphere of like good advice and health advice and all this stuff is also another thing that's relatively new, I would say, is like fatherhood advice, manhood advice, like how to be a man, how to be a good father. This, again, is probably something our parents were not exposed to. I'm sure there was some like dusty bucks in a library somewhere that people were writing about these things, but now there's big content creators talking about, fatherhood and divine masculinity and all of this stuff, and it's really useful information, again, if you do something with it. We've got kids of a similar age. What have you been learning through fatherhood, and how have you come to start building some kind of framework about what it means in terms of how to be a good father? What's the man that you want to be in order to pass that on to your kids?
Yeah, as a archetypal example that I am not perfect at, but I strive for, I forget who it was. It was a fabulous quote. Please don't take it literally. But he said, a whole man is someone who can slit a throat and hold a baby in the same day. And I love that, because I think being a good father means you're a whole man. And yes, there's some nuanced stuff we can get into, but like a part of my personal story, I developed the hold the baby part of me first. Let's be vulnerable. Like, yes, men need to get in touch with their emotions. And I look back 25 years ago and it's like, some of that's probably informed by toxic feminism, where, our society today tries to teach men to behave like women, tries to teach women to behave like men. Do that. Let me know how it works out for you.
It's going great so far.
So I developed a little bit of a pathway to access my emotions, but the warrior side, like the real protector, the masculine energy that provides stability, direction, so undeveloped. And it was, I would call it the beginning of COVID that started to wake that up. And also learning my son, he's on the way. That's definitely started to wake it up. Still a work in progress. So I think as a father, we need to be capable of being fierce and being tender. and then have the discernment to know, where am I best going to be served right now? Child falls down, they're crying. Probably not the time to be fierce.
Yeah.
When it comes time to protecting the child, probably not the time to be a pushover.
Yep.
It's like, well, it's like, no, here's the deal. And I think part of what I strive for as a father, bringing the masculine energy to my son, one, to teach him how to be a man to the best of my ability, but also just give him the guidance he needs. Because children, they're like dogs. They want to lead. And that's the worst thing for them. Just like if you ever walk a dog, it's pulling you. The dog wants to do that. But that's actually stressful on the dog. The dog wants you, deep down, the dog needs you to lead it.
Yeah.
Same with child. So providing structure and discipline for my son. And the hardest part of that is not giving him everything he wants when he wants it. Like, now's the time where we're doing this. We're doing this. Cool. You're crying, a little temper tantrum. That's the fatherly energy in me isn't going to give in to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Just my life is going to be a little bit easier if I bow down, cave in. His emotions are going to go away. He can watch a show. No, like that is not being a good leader for my son. It's not giving him something stable to anchor to. And then, and I'd be curious your thoughts on this too, of how you try to show up as a father. The other thing, lastly, is I think kids, they learn a little bit when we're trying to teach them, and they learn a lot when we're not trying to teach them.
Yeah.
In other words, who and how we are. They're just when we just think we're going about our life, who and how we are, I think, imprints the most lessonry onto our children. So, when there's work stress, I'm making dinner, conversation happening here. How am I in that moment? How am I when, I'm walking into a store with my son and strangers say hi, or do I hold the door? How am I in those moments? How do I work out?
Yeah.
Oftentimes my son will be with me, but even when he's not, it's like I'm shaping who I am. Do I quit when it gets hard? Do I keep going when it gets hard? Work-wise, do I have the courage to change, take risks when I'm called? Like this past year, I've created a lot of changes in how I work. Each one of them scares me because things have been good and predictable with work. But am I setting the example to my son of daddy follows his heart when it's hard to do and it's scary? Now, I could tell him, hey, here's what's going on with daddy. This is a scary idea I have, this thing I've been doing, it's not fulfilling. So I know that's my heart telling me to slightly change or dramatically change direction, but that's scary because our minds can measure what we're going to lose. We can't measure what we're going to gain because it's still in the realm of mystery. So son, I want you to know I have the courage. No, I don't sit down with my 4.5. You show it, you live it, you vibrate it.
Yeah, dude.
So, but I'm curious with fatherhood, what are you aware of? What do you try to express as a dad?
So much good stuff there, and I think a lot of alignment too. Like that thing you said about when your kids kind of throwing the tantrum and you can do the easy now, hard later thing where you're like, all right, I can't deal with this right now. Dad's too busy. Let's just put a show on for the kid. That's the easy now, hard later, because it's not only going to be harder for you later because you're not actually teaching them anything. You're not setting up those boundaries, but the extra layer of responsibility here is it's going to be harder for them later. Because I think, and what I'm starting to really lean into as a father is if you don't teach your child the hard lessons now, they have to learn them eventually. And if you don't teach it to them, the world is going to teach it to them. And they're going to serve it up in a much crueler, nasty package. So this idea or this paradox, if you will, of harder now, easier later is something I lean into a lot. It's delayed gratification, just like with the working out. Like it's hard to do the workout, but it makes life easier later on the micro from the day-to-day experience because you're a bit more grounded and calm, and on the macro because now you're a 44-year-old who's rocking life instead of a 44-year-old with 4 prescription meds, So this is like, I've hummed and hawed about what it means to be a good father. And really, you can read all the books and listen to the podcast too, but even for us, living it is the only way to find out. There is not actually the perfect code or instruction manual. You've just got to do it. And I think children are a wonderful mirror in the sense that they also show you where you're not yet free. They show you where your wounds still are. They show you where you're actually, through parenting, almost reparenting yourself in the stuff that you learned that was imprinted on you through your mom and dad and your relationships that were mirrored to you. So it's a fascinating, interesting, challenging journey and I love it so much. But the point about healthy discipline, I think, is really big. And it's a pushback. The pendulum's always swinging, as we see with anything, in politics and in parenting. The whole recent thing, I guess, which is a little more soft and gentle parenting, like be gentle. And what I've seen with people who have done that with their children, it's kind of like the dog analogy you used, whereby the dog wants to run all over the place and pull you. And if you just let it go where it wants, it's a little stressful for the dog because it's following its instincts or smells, but it actually wants the firmness and the guidance. And I think what gentle parenting is getting wrong is it's hard for those kids because they need structure. They need to know where the kind of guardrails are, and so they can play inside of them. And if you've taken them off because you're going to be a gentle parent, it's very disorienting for them. They don't know where they stand in the world. And they're basically asking for some healthy boundaries. And if you don't show that to them, then they're going to become a person that doesn't have healthy boundaries. And how are they going to know how to operate in this world? And I think that is predominantly the role of the father. It's not to go back in time and do this whole like, oh yeah, I'm super strict and I spank my kid and those kinds of things. But like, you need healthy boundaries. You need to set those up for your child. And it's actually the best thing that you can do for them, because now they can know exactly where the edges are and be safe to operate inside of those, instead of being kind of like out in the proverbial forest with no direction.
Yeah, I agree. And no parenting expert, just a parent with opinions, and some lessons learned the hard way, some lessons learned somewhat gracefully. I think if we're always one way as a parent, we're probably missing the mark. Always being gentle. My lady and I were listening to a parenting podcast, and I thought it was so stupid. This lady, I forget her name, doesn't even matter, but she was talking about how when we would typically discipline a kid, what they need first is connection. And she's going through these examples of, if the kid's punching the wall or hitting another kid, don't tell them to stop it, because they're acting out emotion, which means they need connection. And I was listening to that and like, yeah, I get they are acting out emotion and need connection. And I will tell them to stop it. If they're hitting another kid, damaging something, we're going to go from fluid, maybe call it feminine, gentle. We're going to get pretty rigid pretty fast. Stop doing that. That's appropriate. And then, but being rigid all the time, if you think of you hear stories of, yeah, my dad was a military father, and just like, it was like drill sergeant at home. Well, that's pretty lopsided too. Like, for example, again, not trying to pretend like I do it right all the time, but this is one thing I think I got right with my son. Take him to jiu-jitsu minimum of once a week, usually on Saturdays. And last night it was a Tuesday, and there's a kids jiu-jitsu class at the gym. And I said, you have a choice. Do you want to go to jiu-jitsu tonight or not? And he said, no, I don't want to. It's like, great. We have the structure of, you go once a week at a minimum. Yeah. And then it felt appropriate. Like, I want to empower him with a fluid choice here. Yeah. But if it was just every time, do you want to go to jiu-jitsu? No, he's probably going to want to play with the toy he's playing with. So I think kids probably, if we didn't know any better, we'd say kids need masculine energy and feminine energy.
Yeah. Almost like they need, healthy home environment and a good balance. I think we all have a tendency to get, too extreme on these things. And I think part of living in that balance and helping them is finding it within yourself and knowing that you're going to skew towards certain tendencies, because if you're a man, you're going to have more of that masculine role. If you're the woman, you're going to have more of that. And that's a wonderful thing. I'm thinking, 2 days ago, we went to a party, and my friends have a zip line set up in the back garden, and my son got on the zip line. And I hadn't been to this friend's house before, but my wife has been. She's told me he's done the zip line before, and it's cool for him, you know, because he's young, and it's like a big long zip line. It's pretty scary, and he's holding on. They're not strapped in or anything. So when he said, I want to do the zip line, I'm like, you've done this before, right? You know the whole shtick. And he's like, yeah, I've done it before. So I put him on it and I let him go. And I realized it's going really fast. And I didn't realize that it was going to completely swing him at the end. And usually somebody's there to catch them because I didn't know the zip line. So he goes hurtling down the zip line and he crashes into a tree essentially. Jeez. And he gets pretty rocked, you know, and he's currently rocking his first black eye and it's big bulge. And, you know, it's that whole like, oh my God, it could have been so much worse, but it's not. He's okay. And I realized in the instant when he hit the tree, I was like, you get that gut feeling where you're like, kind of messed up there because, you know, I didn't know. It was obviously not on purpose, but you get that, like, you don't want to see your kid get hurt. But then I'm running over and thinking about in that moment, like, how do you want to handle this? Because he's on the floor. Mostly he's afraid because he just got hurt and he's looking to you to see how to react. And if you run over like, oh my God, are you okay? They're going to lose it. They're going to start wailing and crying. So I approach very calmly with a little pep in my step and, you know, using my hands. And I'm like, what happened, kiddo? What happened? You're okay. You're okay. You're okay. Just very calm. And he was all right, actually. He didn't even really cry. He was just like, I hit the tree. I hurt my eye. But it's funny to see like everybody else's reaction too. It's and mostly from the women. I'm not trying to judge, but it's just like, oh my God. And there's like running and there's chaos and there's panic. And you almost need that grounded masculine energy in those situations. So like, let's all just take a breath here. Yeah. He's alive. He's not bleeding. No one's dead. We're good. Let's take a breath. He's okay. And then afterwards, you know, helping him form the story about what happened because he has a tendency to focus and like, oh, I got hurt. And I'm like, you got hurt and you were really strong. You were really brave and you took a risk and that's awesome. And sometimes taking a risk is scary. And like you said, if it doesn't scare you, it can't adapt you. So, and you did it and I'm proud of you for that. And helping him also rewrite stories in real time. And I think part of that, again, comes back to, I believe that the greatest gift you can give to your children is to work on yourself. Yeah. And when you were saying before about you can have all of these quotes and you can tell them the stories, but mostly they're going to watch what you do, not necessarily listen to what you say. Reminds me of other quote, and it feels like jumping around a little bit, but I think it's one of the saints. So he says, preach the gospel everywhere you go, and only when necessary use words. And I think that's a good aphorism for beautiful. Fatherhood. Like preach when necessary. And preach all the time, but only when necessary use words. Just show it, just be it. And the only way you can be it is if you're doing the work on yourself. Yeah,
amen to that. I noticed with myself, you know, I mentioned, you know, COVID helped wake up the warrior part of me, still in development. And I noticed part of my current work of bringing that masculine structure to myself, which, as you're saying, like that's the first step in order to impart it to my son. So it's more of a 3-dimensional imprint rather than here's some words of the gospel. Mm-hmm. It's more like, okay, I need to live this. I find something that's really helped me is keeping commitments I make to myself, whether it's here's a workout. I'm just going to do this until it's done. And it also really shows up for me in the mundane life crap that I just don't like, whether it's like, oh, I've got to get to an email from a lawyer or the taxes, car insurance. Yeah. I would normally just procrastinate, push that off over and over and over. But now I look at those as, I know I won't enjoy doing that. So that's not a question, but I look at those as micro wins. Like this is part of being a real man, doing this little annoying thing. Usually it doesn't take as long as I think it will, but as mundane as that is, I'm aware like this is part of me becoming a better father. Yeah. Yeah. Even though my son has no awareness of it.
Yeah. Well, it's integrity too, right? Because then when you give the lessons to your children or in whatever else, when you're talking with a friend, when you're actually giving some advice, it's kind of been authenticated through your experience. Because I think what you said before about like trying to impart all of these ideas onto your child and saying, when it feels scary, you do this. But then if you have that and you can say that, but you don't live it, your kid also kind of, they're like ninjas, dude. They see, oh, dad speaks out of two sides of his mouth. He says, treat people this way, but then he treats people this way. He says, do hard things, but he's not the kind of person that does hard things.
Yeah.
He tells me that it's so important to clean up my room. His office is a goddamn mess.
Yeah.
So it's like you also, if you're going to give advice, I mean, walk the walk too.
Absolutely. And I think even like cues, when we're being the hypocrite, like advising the child to do something that we're not really congruent with, man, just probably talk to a body language expert. And when we're telling our kids that, they'd probably see our eyes are doing weird stuff. You know, our body language is basically telling our child, I don't do this, but I want you to. And even though they're not a body language expert, so they can't delineate, oh yeah, dad's eyes looked down into the right or up into the right. And, you know, his movements and his blink rate increased. But you can always tell something seems off about that. Yeah. And kids are so in tune.
Yeah. They've got a good spidey sense, man. Yeah. They're pretty tapped in. And it's funny, because I guess you always think that like this tiny little being is just a blank slate that you just imprint everything onto, and then you actually have one and you're like, you know some stuff, don't you?
They're not stupid.
They're not stupid. No, it's almost like it's weird in the sense that like this baby is born, then we go through this growing up process, and that's almost like a decades-long journey of forgetting what we did know when we came into this world, like this innate wisdom, this connection to source, to forget it all, to then as we age in our life, like hopefully remembering again. And that's kind of like the cycle. And it's just really interesting because, of course, I think even developmentally before 2 years of age, they say your child doesn't really have a developed sense of self. We might call that an ego, right? They don't even differentiate between, you know, themselves and the external world. That's why they'll just pee on the couch. They're not even separate from the couch. They're not separate from the mother when they're breastfeeding. And then as programming comes online, they start to get a sense of who they are in the world. And you need it to operate, right? Because you need those kind of boundaries and understanding of me and you and them and other and all of that stuff. But then if that goes too far, which it often does in the developmental journey, it becomes something that then we've actively got to spend most of the rest of our life trying to reverse engineer to realize, like, okay, I have an ego. I don't buy into this message that like ego is the enemy, like kill your ego at all costs. I think it's more like a puppy that needs training. Yeah. It's
kind of like your large intestine. It's filled with poop, and it's not the enemy. Try to live without one. If you don't have one, they have to take medical compensations, colostomy bag, because you kind of need it. But just like you don't want your ego running everything, being out of control, if your large intestine gets out of control, the poop inside, it goes everywhere, and it can ruin a lot of good things. It can kill you. But you want it, just like the large intestine, you want it contained. You want awareness of it. And honestly, I think an ego makes our life better. It has a potential to make our life better. Bingo. Especially if we can be the observer of our ego, see our blind spots, notice, that's my egotistical nature. Like, I tore a muscle working out. That's my ego. Or here's my control drama. That's my ego. But if you can't see it, boy, you got sepsis in your psychological mind. Yeah.
Terrible master, great servant. You know, so try and make it work for you. And I think what's interesting, I'm really curious to come back to something you said about how, in particular, this last year, you've been taking a lot of risks with work, following your instincts, following your heart, doing the hard right thing. Harder now because it's been working, but easier later because it'll be more in alignment or it'll be more fun or whatever it is. And that, you know, because this is an entrepreneurial journey for you with comedy and with content creation. And I've always thought that like entrepreneurial ventures are self-development tools disguised as money-making machines. You know, so what's been that process been like? Say more about like this year of change and what you're thinking about and where you're moving and what you're getting into.
The overarching lesson is letting go of something good to make space for something greater. And I mentioned the quote before. It comes from a good friend of mine, actually just moved to Austin, named Kyle Cease. And why letting go of something good to let something greater come in is so scary is because our minds can measure what we're going to lose, but we can't measure what we're going to gain. And what we're going to gain does not come with a guarantee. There's no certainty around it. but I can feel when it's time to let something go. One of those things specifically for me is stand-up comedy. If I could teleport myself to a stage, Elon, if you want to invent that technology,
it's coming.
Elon, please invent teleportation technology that doesn't nuke our cells and mitochondria.
Teleportation without the EMFs would be awesome. Thank you.
If I could teleport to a stage every night, man, I'd be doing it every night. The reality is, the past 7, maybe almost 8 years, I've been touring pretty much nonstop. Sometimes there's a several week break, sometimes in the winter, a couple month break, but it's been pretty relentless touring. And I look at that, I just realized this is very unfulfilling for me. The stage time, it's so magical. However, if I'm on the road doing comedy shows, usually fly out Thursday morning, come back dog tired Sunday afternoon, about 1% of that time I'm on stage.
Right.
The rest of that time, airplanes, hotels, I'm away from the people that matter most to me.
Yep.
So now at 44, I've just realized one person's dream is not my dream. And my old dream isn't even my dream anymore.
Yeah.
I realize I feel like a failure when I'm just on the road, every other weekend. And I just realized, this does not matter as much to me. And there's some comedians up and coming, they would literally kill to be in the position I'm in. So it took me a while to get right with the decision to starting 2026. I'm not going to tour doing stand-up comedy because it's like, dude, is this self-sabotage? This is so many people's dreams. And I just realized it's very clear. No, what matters most to me is being grounded consistently with the people that I love and that matter most to me, having good energy for them rather than, hey, I did shows 3 nights in a row, get off the stage at midnight, asleep by maybe 2:30 a.m. Then my body just wakes up at the normal time, 6:30 or 7. So after 3 nights of that, I come back home and I'm not the same guy for my son. It just takes me 4 or 5 days to feel normal and show up fully for him, show up fully for the rest of my work. So, for example, that's a big change that I'm making. And then also a couple other business things that are entrepreneurially smart. I looked at those and my heart's not in that. We're going to cut those.
Yeah.
Even though it's they make revenue sense, it's, my heart's not in it.
I had a teacher say to me once, don't ignore when the body speaks for what the mind thinks. And I think you're describing that here. The problem with being self-aware is that it's a very tricky, double-edged sword, because you can start to do what you were doing in real time, which is the body was speaking and saying hey, this is done. This chapter's closed for us. But the head is saying dude, maybe you're self-sabotaging. People would kill to be in this position. What are you talking about? You're going to give this up. So it's and obviously most of what comes from the mind is coming from that kind of lower self, the scarcity, the wanting to cling to what is good instead, which sacrifices what is great, because what is great is potentially in the unknown, because you have to do something that's not got the path laid out, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've learned everything amazing that's come into my life I never planned for. It's just a matter when there's space. So I can measure what I'm going to lose. I can look at my balance sheets. I will lose this much money by not touring. I'll lose the thrill of being on stage with a full house. That's so amazing, so valuable. And it's just, I'm so grateful I've got to experience so much of it. So measure what I'm going to lose. Can't measure what I'm going to gain.
Right.
Oftentimes I find when there's space, the greater will come in. However, the motive isn't to try to manipulate life like, hey, this is cool, but I want like whatever that is, I just want that times two. So I'm going to manipulate life. Like I'm tuned into myself, let that go. And then something else comes in that will give me the same set of problems. So there might be something tangibly greater that comes. If it's awesome, purposeful, right. I'll embrace it. But also the greater, it's actually already kind of tangible. More of me for my family, more of me for me, better energy, better focus on my other pieces of work. So even though that doesn't come with stuff that shows on a spreadsheet, because it's too good to be on a spreadsheet. It's not really measurable.
That's so good, man. There's observable and hidden metrics in life. And we'll often sacrifice the hidden metrics for the observable ones because they're more obvious. Like you put them on a spreadsheet, like, well, this makes this much a month, or this, it's like, it's very clear. But the hidden metrics is like something like peace or equanimity, or you can't put that on a spreadsheet. And sometimes in a world that's very material, it becomes secondary when it should be primary. And you have to sometimes like give up some of those things, even leave money on the table, leave relationships on the table, etc. So you can find more of what we're all really looking for, which is something like peace.
Yeah. And I love that, the tangible and intangible metrics. That's such a great framework. Like money, it's so worthless, it can be measured.
Yep.
It's not worth nothing, but it's so worthless, you can measure it. You can't measure your love for your children. You can't measure your love for your lady, your parents, your friends. It is so valuable, it can't be measured.
I also really like that you are creating the space for potential. That something even greater comes without being attached to like, if I create the space, something even better is going to come, because that's there's almost like this giant, well, they call it a leap of faith, right? Not a leap of guarantee. So you're taking a leap of faith, and faith, there's that axiom that you got to be delusional somewhat about the future, and you can either operate in faith or fear, because that's the two choices you've got. So you want to take the leap of faith, or do you want to take the leap of fear? And obviously fear, I kind of believe like where you place your attention is what you get in life. Life's like a giant boomerang in some mysterious way, that if you throw out the faith boomerang and you be a good person, that like good things are probably going to find you. And you also have to release attachment to the good things finding you, because now you're not really taking the leap of faith. You're like, look at me, I'm doing all the right things. Now give me what I deserve. You
have to be comfortable in the unknown. In other words, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable in the unknown. Otherwise, we just suffocate our potential in the coffin of our comfort zone, which typically means whatever's familiar, we keep that in place because it's comfortable. And sometimes it's torturous, but if the torture, the stress of it is familiar, that's what we find comfort in.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. What do you think is your temperature check on what's going on culturally? Obviously, since we last spoke, we've had a huge change. There's, the White House has changed leadership. You've got all kind of manner of things that capture the public attention. Like recently we had Sydney Sweeney's jeans and Cracker Barrel backlash over changing the logo. And it's just funny because you're in this space, and obviously you make comedic commentary videos about a lot of this stuff. Like when you zoom out and just look at the culture right now, what do you even make of this?
Yeah, I think we need more division, more erosion of our freedoms, more censorship would be great.
Excellent, yes.
No, I think we're, compared to last time we talked, not to throw him under the bus, but I will, and I'll drive the bus over him, Biden. we're in the intensity of whoever was running the show, taking us in a, quite frankly, unfree communist direction. Trying to get people to surrender their free will and just obey. I think we're in such a good place. Not as in, let's stop and rest here and take everything for granted, but the pendulum swung pretty far left. The goal isn't to be pretty far right. I think place of balance is good. Pendulum probably never stops, but we're coming back in a direction, and 5 years from now we'll be like, we need the pendulum in the other direction. But I think it's great. The freedom of speech, it was never taken from us, but so many people surrendered it through self-censorship. And just in the comedy world, you can listen to normal comedians speaking freely now.
Yep. Whereas
4 years ago, some were, but not a lot. Just the use of the R word, retard. And that symbolizes, it's not like, I'm not saying that's a great word to use. It's funny as hell sometimes, and I will use it. But it symbolizes people aren't paralyzed in fear anymore. You look at Sydney Sweeney with that ad, objectively a good ad. It was, hundreds of millions of dollars they made in a couple days from that ad. Objectively a good ad. It sold some jeans. And then American Eagle not bowing down to apologize. That's such a good sign. 3 years ago, guarantee would have been an apology. Cracker Barrel, their stupid, we're going to take away, make our restaurants look like a sterile lobby of an abortion clinic. They did that. They listened enough. They changed their logo back. And that, not a complete, I don't even care about Cracker Barrel, but just the fact that they kind of course corrected enough to, we'll change our logo back. To me, it's all good cultural signs. In our culture, RFK Jr., he's put health on the map, not disease care, which is typically at a national level all you hear about, but literally health, improving health. He's put that on the map, and I'm excited about what he's doing, where we're going with that. So culturally, for those of us who live in the U.S., things are going, I think, in a great direction. Not to take it for granted. It'll always be good, always be better. That's really up to us. But I'm excited the progress we've made so fast. And it was a dark, scary time that didn't have me filled with a hell of a lot of optimism.
Yeah, I felt the same. I was actually in Austin when the election took place, and I've been, I would say, somewhat apolitical most of my life, and that's the privilege that you don't have to care about things when you're young and life is kind of taken care of, and you start to get older a little bit, and you start to see what's at stake, and then you start to ponder questions like what's the future my children will inherit here. And I remember, just the relief that I felt, because I felt the same way. And it's so funny because there's probably somebody listening to this that is on the opposite end of the spectrum saying, what are they talking about? Freedom and hope. This is the dystopian. This is the dictatorship. Everybody's got a different perspective on that. Sure. But personally, it's based kind of around what you value, right? And similarly, we spoke about on our first conversation, I think we both really value freedom and everything that encompasses, and that did seem to be at stake at this election, especially with freedom of speech. The foundation, the bedrock of what this country is built on in many ways seemed to be literally at stake, and Elon buying X and all of that stuff was pivotal in that. And I think the fact that 2 years ago nobody was talking about seed oils aside from a few niche lunatics with podcasts or Paul Saladino or a few Instagram influencers, and now this is on national news, and love it or hate it, and the evidence-based guys are going to argue with the influencers all day long about this stuff, but at least we're talking about it. But I am very hopeful, like you are. I'm a little bit annoyed sometimes that even the statement "Make America Healthy Again" has become another thing that we fight over, because who wouldn't want to get behind a statement like that? It's so crazy.
I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. If you're making it controversial, make America healthy again, the problem isn't with the movement. No. The problem's with you. Good health for our children, our countrymen, nothing is controversial about that. No. If you feel controversy, it's coming from you.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing we can unite on. And I love the structure of how it's set up. Obviously, it's Trump administration. He's Republican, but Kennedy, lifelong Democrat. He had to leave the Democrat Party, become independent, but lifelong Democrat. That's literally unification. Like this is not conservative, liberal. It's human.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened to many people is. I guess people that were old school Democrats, they just kept moving the goalposts so far that those ended up drifting and starting this kind of unity party kind of thing, it's just very interesting for me. It's funny also that this was the first election I could vote in because I'm an American citizen now, but for the longest time I'm
glad you're a citizen. I was going to call ICE and get you out of here.
Oh shit. No, I'm good, guys. I know I'm fully fledged. I've got eagles in my backyard. I sleep with the American blanket. I've got it all. I pay my taxes too, Uncle Sam.
Fair enough. You can stay.
I'm a good guy. I'm one of the good guys. But yeah, it was funny for a long time because I felt like the odd child out at a very dysfunctional family dinner, and I'm sitting in the middle and I'm looking at this side of the family scream about this and this side of the family scream about this, and like I just hope that we can move forward and focus on what really matters, health being a profound one of those things. And objectively, whether you agree with Bobby Kennedy or the MAHA movement and you're so, blue no matter who, that you're rejecting this, you can't argue with the facts that we are very, very sick. Yeah. And it's tragic. And our children are very, very sick. And if somebody doesn't do something pretty profound, I mean, we're facing population collapse, infertility crises, our waters are poisoned, our rivers you can't drink from anymore, our food is captured by a few labels that control everything, and it's just full of shit, and we're poisoning people.
The average 22-year-old man has the testosterone levels of a 67-year-old man from 2000. Just the testosterone epidemic amongst men is a huge issue. And then the 100 other issues, and then there's more behind that. It's insane. And with what you talked about, you mentioned at least we're talking about it. That's what matters. Like Bobby Kennedy being right about everything, that's not what matters. Him being wrong about everything, that's not what matters. We're talking about it. You don't like a perspective you're hearing from the MAHA movement. Great, talk about it. Like what doesn't make sense to you? What seems like a better way? Because I think a fair shake at health, where health isn't the abnormality anymore, but that's more the normal. Yeah. Because we've come from a paradigm that I think we're slowly breaking. Good health is not normal. Yeah. 6 in 10 children have a chronic disease. 50% of Americans get cancer. 50% get heart disease. Not to mention the intangible quality of life that there's no real measurement for. We're talking about how to have better health and make that the normal, not the exception. So the fact that we're talking about it, to your point, that's really what matters.
Yeah, that's how we really learn and grow and come to the table is conversation. And to close this, I'd be curious how you keep conceptualizing how you use your voice and how you use what you create to hopefully steer that. I think you use comedy beautifully. We talked about it in the first episode, like the archetype of the court jester that can poke fun at things, that pulls out like some hard truth that we've got to look at in a light way. Like, this is serious business, and we can hold it a little bit lightly in our hands sometimes and laugh at the lunacy of it all while still being like, we need to figure some shit out here. What's your hope for how you continue to create content, and what you hope to get people thinking about or inspire in people?
Yeah, I think awakening people to freedom, and if you think I'm just talking about American freedom, that's not correct. Certainly national freedom is important, but that's dependent on personal freedom, which means helping people awaken to do more of their own critical thinking, because so many of us have thoughts in our heads that are not our own. It's someone else's software running on the hardware of our mind, and we mistake it as our own. So if we have the ability to rethink our thinking and stop believing our beliefs so we can question our beliefs, keep the ones that genuinely make sense to us, and then search for a better way on the rest, I think that's a big part of the goal. The more we can follow our hearts, like what makes sense, what feels right. It's so artsy fartsy to talk about, but I mean, I think our heart it's our North Star. So awakening people to the personal freedoms of their own critical thinking, following their hearts is a huge part. And, using the language of comedy has largely been how I've been doing that, where essentially present like egotistical nature and, modeling, not thinking for yourself, modeling, not following your heart, and then poking holes in that with the sort of satire. And that'll continue to be something in my arsenal. I mean, I love it. I feel very called to do it. And I'm also called to just talk straightforward, not just being a slave to only speaking the comedic language. So doing more and more of that. This afternoon, I'm have the opportunity to speak on a MAHA online event. And it's like, cool. Like I love health.
Yeah.
And I love what health does for us. It allows us to maximize this beautiful God-given vessel. And it's the only way we can show up more fully for who and what matters most to us in life.
Beautifully said, brother. You'll keep using your voice. Like I said, it was almost 2 years ago since the first podcast. We are a little bit older now, both a little bit more jacked. Gingers are black now, so that's new. So when we podcast again in another 2 years, who knows where we will be, but hopefully a little more wiser still, a few more extra pounds of muscle, a little bit juicier, and who knows what race we will be, but we will be here. We will have it again. I appreciate you a lot, man. Where can people go to keep up with you and everything that you're creating?
Yeah, best place is awakenwithjp.com. It's got links to all my stuff, and all my social medias are Awaken with JP.
Boom, easy. You're the man. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Stay radical, friends. Stay free, and we will see you next time. Peace. All right, friends. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.